We are live. We are live. Welcome to College Football's Peek Around the Corner with your host, Greg Flugar. We cover everything in college football because we love everything in college football. And if you do as well, please subscribe to this ever-growing channel. Smash the like button if you like our content. Share the video with your family and friends. If you want to support this show through a donation where you see the $sign when you put a comment in, do that and we'll get to your comment as soon as we can. It's called a super chat. Welcome into the studio that sits on the corner of Keith Jackson Parkway and Kurt Gowdy Avenue. Do not be afraid. Do not be afraid to be a PATC legend. With your comments in the chat room and with your phone calls later in the show. We have a stacked show. I do apologize. We were supposed to come on at noon Eastern, 11 o'clock Central. The delay has everything to do with the show. Nothing outside. My mother is fine. My wife is fine. The neighborhood is fine. Everything is fine. But the show, it's what delay. We've been working on this Holy Smokes major update for quite a few days. Remember when I said, yeah, the Florida State money perch, he's all upset. We received the first information from him. Now remember, I don't talk to the Florida State money perch. nor did I talk with the people involved in the Colorado thing or the USC story that we broke in March 31st, 2022. I get the information at the end of it all. But I do ask questions, and then it goes back and forth. But BTM and his associates, all the money purchased, I'm not talking to these people one-on-one. So sometimes it takes a while. I have a bunch of questions. You know how I am. I poke and prod, poke and prod, poke and prod. And then when we get some information that seems to be a little bit out of the box, we don't want to be stuck on our silo, so we challenge it. And if it comes back with more credibility, then we have to go with it. Remember, December 5th, 2022 is when we first heard about Florida State going public in 2 or 3 months. And then we had to hear about it again on the 12th and the 19th. And finally, we had to do a live show December 26th, and we talked a little bit about it. We talked about how in 2 months, Florida State was going to say something in public, how the ACC had to change, and all that happened. Mike Alford came out in February. So we received some information from the Florida State money perch, and okay, we had to go back and forth. And finally, we're in the spot that we know we can deliver the information to you without myself getting in trouble with anybody, because we talk to other people as well, people in the college football reporting world, so to speak. So today I can say what I'm about to say without burning bridges, to where I can harvest the field again, and that's the spot that we want to be in. And the information we got from Florida State doesn't even really it does have to do with Florida State, but it has to do with something else inside the ACC, the Holy Smokes Theater, PATC's Holy Smokes Theater, in regarding the drama around the ACC. Politicians are getting involved. We see politicians getting involved when it came to Florida State Florida State not getting into the playoffs. That's a drop in the bucket. When it comes to this realignment, the next wave of realignment, it will not happen. It will not pass. It will not succeed without the politicians' approval. And boy, were we told this by someone of importance, and let's just say, we'll just call it the Virginia money perch. Yes, the Virginia money perch. Yes, we've had long conversations with Virginia money perch. So I believe we kind of have more, as crazy as it sounds, I think we're starting to see how this is going to shape up, how the landscape is really starting to firm up on the next realignment that's going to happen, and with ACC schools. But the politicians are going to be involved. So it's not just the SEC has to be okay with whatever they're going to do. It's not just the Big Ten is going to have to be okay with whatever they do. It's not just Fox Sports going to be okay with whatever they do. It's not going to be ESPN going to be okay with everything the SEC does. All of this is going to have to smell the politician's test. Unlike when Texas and Oklahoma called Greg Sankey. Unlike when USC called the Big Ten alone. They didn't call the Big Ten with UCLA on the same phone call. This is different. This is going to be different. The gap in resources, going forward between the Big Ten versus the ACC, the Big SEC versus the ACC, it's going to be huge. It doesn't mean that the ACC and the Big 12 are not great conferences, but the schools that want to get into the Big Ten, SEC have the opportunity to get into the Big Ten and SEC. They're going to take it, and the politicians are going to do everything they can to make sure it happens. And that is going to cause a lot of drama. So let's first start. Now, we've been working on this for days. I was asked a question on the last live show too. We didn't even have a live show yesterday because we were working on this. The last live show, or it was 2 live shows ago, I had a bunch of questions saying, when's the next update? When's the next update? And I said, gonna be next week. Gonna be next week, which is this week, later this week. So we're going to get into it. Ryan Thomas, thank you for the super chat. I appreciate it. UNC, Virginia, Florida State, Miami, Clemson, or Georgia Tech. Book it. I don't know what you're referring to, the Big Ten or the SEC or both. Ryan Thomas, thank you for the super chat. I appreciate your generosity to the channel. Let me think, first of all, let me get through... We're going to get into it. We've got a lot of, just a little bit of portal news, head coaching news, offensive coordinator news, and then we're going to go right in to the Holy Smokes Theater. The seating arrangement is different today, December 7th. The seating arrangement is different. Completely different. Not completely different, but it is different. So we're going to get to it. Let me, I've already missed, let's see. Skull Ducky, thanks for coming on in. Matt Neeson, Gold Nose, Happy Greg, happy Thursday, everybody. Bo Stacker's in the house. Obsidian 75, Patrick. The ACC done for soon. Early peak members, Stephen McNeely's in the house. Lee's in the house. B's in the house. Grateful Trojan. Red Raider, Laura Weiss is in the house. Thanks for coming on in, Laura. Hagen is in the house. Early peak member, Mr. Buckeye. Gerald Jones is in the house. Marketech, it's happening. Bill G, good afternoon. Early peak member. Sheep and Wolf's Clothing, Jonathan Weaver, Lannis 31, Big 10, Ted is in the house, Immaculate, Mr. Hawkeye, Early Peak member, Colorado Buffalo, Richard L, Jordan is it Seton, the offensive lineman? He committed, 5-star offensive lineman, has committed to Colorado. Bubba Bryant, hi, Greg. Hello from Iowa. Nice to see you as well. Thanks for coming on in. Crab Cakes and Football. Early peak member, Crab Cakes and Football. Thanks for coming on in. Jamie Thornton. What's going on in Florida State country right now? It's like a nuclear bomb has been dropped. Movie Time Blues is in the house. Go Black is in the house. Buckshot Kid is in the house. Darrell MVP 24 is in the house. We've got a new member, new early peak member, Jonathan Weaver. Thank you so much. Appreciated. You are now knighted, cloak and dagger style. Thank you, Jonathan Weaver, for your early peak membership. And for those new to the channel, we'll get into it later. What you get being an early peak member. We got to get into it. We can't waste any more time. One of the biggest criticisms I get is I don't get to it. I'm going to try to get to it right now. Okay. First of all, Ross Dellinger reports AAC Commissioner Mike Oresco is retiring. AAC Commissioner Mike Oresco. Been on the job for a long time. He's been fighting the battles, even now, currently, on how the new playoff format's going to look like in the years ahead from 2026 and beyond, especially. Mike Oresco is retiring. Who's going to be the new commissioner of the AAC? Very interesting. Mike Oresco is retiring. Jim Harbaugh, Michigan, from John Bacon, Michigan beat writer, Michigan athletic director Ward Manuel. Michigan leaders and lawyers are finalizing Harbaugh's contract. 5 years, $55 million, which will make him the highest paid coach in Big Ten, as promised weeks ago. The ball is now in Harbaugh's court. I've seen just reports, most recent reports right before we came on live, that there's still a lot of work to do. But it looks like it's going to get done. Ross Dellinger also reported the Kansas Jayhawks expected to hire former Baylor, BYU offensive coordinator Jeff Grimes. So there is some news out of Lawrence, Kansas. James Madison. They lose Coach Siganetti to Indiana, so they replace him with Bob Chesney. James Madison officially announced Bob Chesney, who was the head coach of Holy Cross, a very successful FCS program. I believe Bob Chesney was the coach there at Holy Cross for about four or five years. Florida running back Trevor Etienne has entered the transfer portal. Holy smokes. Etienne, man. This guy, 2 years at Florida. He's averaging about 6 yards per rush. He can catch the ball out of the backfield, just like his older brother Travis. He's the real deal Holyfield, and he's in the portal. This guy's going to get a lot of big time opportunities, big time offers coming out of the portal. Trevor Etienne. Holy smokes. We'll get to that later in the show. North Carolina. We have so much to get to today, guys. And it all ties in. But decision, this is what I tweeted out yesterday. Now remember, I'm working on this update of the Holy Smokes Theater. During the time when I'm tweeting this out, I did not do a live show yesterday. I wouldn't even know what to say yesterday. I'm trying to firm up this stuff. We're trying to make sure we get the go-ahead. What we're about to tell you today. So here I am. We have the news that Kevin Guslowich is now the new Michigan State president. We were expecting this for like the last month. It finally happened. And so I tweeted this out. Decision on who replaces Kevin Guslowich as the next chancellor of North Carolina would demonstrate what faction at Chapel Hill actually has the power moving forward in making monumental realignment decision if one presents itself to the institution within the next couple of years. So, which we think is going to happen. Unlike Clemson and Florida State, North Carolina is not aligned. In other words, the very top of the leadership, the middle part of the leadership, the border regions, and the donors are not aligned. Even the donors themselves are not aligned when it comes to what North Carolina wants to be in the future. I don't know all the particulars of Kevin Gustowicz's presidential leadership at UNC Chapel Hill. There was a lot of issues. And all presidents have detractors. Eventually they will have detractors. But this was a rock fight every single day for Kevin Gustowicz. So now what we would call what B-Tim, the Big Ten man, a close friend of mine, helping me break stories for years, for the last decade, his associates, we would call Kevin Gustowicz a silent voice, a silent Big Ten voice within the University of North Carolina. This is not really a secret. We never phrased it this way, but he was. So is Bubba Cunningham. This sort of percolated out of Brian Murphy, WRAL, when they did the Freedom of Information Act. An Observer, a newspaper down in the Carolinas, did a Freedom of Information Act on the communications between Kevin Gustowicz and Bubba Cunningham, and also Jim Delaney and Bubba Cunningham on June 30th, 2022, when it was officially announced that USC and UCLA will leave into the Big Ten. Kevin Gustowicz, if realignment would have happened under his watch, he would have pushed Big Ten. There's a lot of people that would have pushed back. The donors, we know 100% here at Peek Around the Corner, they are completely split on the future of North Carolina. SEC, Big Ten, remain in ACC. Completely split. North Carolina is not aligned. I would suggest that whoever is the next chancellor of North Carolina, that is going to be a good indication on who has the power to push North Carolina either to the SEC or the Big Ten in the next 3 years. Because the battle between where North Carolina is going to end up is going to take place in the battle of who becomes the new chancellor at North Carolina. And I'm just going to give you a little personal note on this. While I have BTM and my associates, and we have people we can talk to in regards to this, I have a family member who, for transparency, I will only go so far with this, but I got a family member who is employed at the North Carolina. So we are going to, we've been on this. We're going to continue to be on this. And this is a story unto itself, North Carolina. It is not aligned. It's going to have to determine their future. This next chancellor is the biggest decision this university, when it comes to at least the athletic department, but also this is also going to have to entail the research, academia, North Carolina. So that is a big story unto itself. Here's an example. We're going to go into the theater real quick here, ladies and gentlemen. Real quick. This is Matt Baker, Tampa Bay Times. Statement from U.S. Rep. Gus Barakis on Florida State playoff exclusion. He wants briefing from the playoff and NCAA about the decision. This Florida congressman said this is a huge blow to the student-athletes who put their hearts and minds in completing a perfect season. While I understand there are many factors what the committee may consider, it's puzzling why the end results on the field are not their top priority, as they are only objective measurement between teams. The playoff selection committee elevated teams with lesser records over an undefeated Power 5 conference champion. When there are millions of dollars hanging in the balance. Now, this is the important part of this. When there are millions of dollars hanging in the balance, and with many of these funds slated to support publicly funded schools, there must be more transparency in the process when deciding who is in and who is out. There is a money difference between who is in, who is out. It did cost Florida State about $6 million to be out. They want transparency. More and more politicians want transparency. Now, that decision's not going to get reversed. Politicians, they do have to respond to their constituents at times. This is a big issue up in northern Florida, Tallahassee, Florida. But now, imagine what's going to happen in realignment. It's going to be worth way more than $2, $4, $6 million. And it's going to be more permanent, more deciding the future of Florida State, a Clemson, a North Carolina, a Virginia Tech, a Miami, Florida, and the other schools in the ACC. This, politicians getting involved in the decision of the playoff committee is one thing. It's only going to last, it only has a shelf life of a few weeks. They want answers, they want transparency. The realignment wave that's about to hit in the first quarter of 2024, that's a tsunami compared to this. The politicians are going to get more and more involved. In fact, we've been told at Holy Smokes Theater they are already involved. And that's where we're going to get to right now. We're going into the Holy Smokes Theater major update. December 7th. We've been working on this story for days, and now we're going to deliver it to you. Cameron B., thank you so much for being a new member. I'm going to knight you, cloak and dagger style. Thank you for becoming an early peak member. If you're new to the show, we'll get to what that means in a little bit, but we got to get to the Holy Smokes Theater. Okay, so let me take a drink out of my what is this? Cherry Coke, zero sugar. Fat guy, Minnesota. Okay, here we go. We've been wanting an update. Been talking to the Florida State Money Perch. If you're new to the show, this is a person who's been giving us great, accurate information since December 2022, when he said Florida State's going to make some declaration, some significant statement on the future of their conference affiliation in the first quarter 2024. We reported that December of 2022. And we're heading that way, as you can see. We spoke to him. I did not directly, but we asked me and my my people, let's just put it that way, spoke to Florida State Money Perch. We spoke to him for a couple of days. He gave us some very interesting information. What he did is he got us in touch with somebody else. And we're allowed to say it. We're not going to say names, obviously. But we were able to push the envelope. We spoke to someone we've never spoken before to, ever. According to Florida State Money Perch, and confirmed by the Virginia Money Perch, Virginia Tech and Virginia are absolutely tied at the hip. Now, you're going to say, well, we know that, Greg. I get it. But let's flush this out here. The Attorney General, I don't know the gentleman's name. I don't know if it was last year, 6 months ago. He made a statement in public saying that we're not going to allow one school to devalue the other school. We're not going to let, let's say, Virginia go out of the ACC into the Big Ten, for example, and Virginia Tech get left behind in the ACC. I'm paraphrasing, but basically that's what the Attorney General said. You can Google it. This Attorney General is a major college football fan, sports fan. We were told first by the Florida State Money Perch that he said, because we were saying, okay, the Florida State Money Perch was telling us, look, Florida State obviously is ticked off, incredibly angry, right? The relationship with ESPN probably completely burned down to the ground. And so we were going through all that. But then he started talking about his friends in Virginia saying how they are frustrated, they can't do anything because they have Virginia Tech in tow. So then we started going back and forth, and he gave us the ability to talk to the Virginia Money Perch. So the Virginia Money Perch told us the following. Virginia Tech and Virginia are tied completely at the hip. They've been told by the Attorney General and other politicians in Virginia that they are tied at the hip. This is not a case of where Virginia, let's say we go down this road, January, February, March, we go down this road where there's schools declaring their intentions to leave the ACC conference, and Virginia says, look, hey, we've got an opportunity to go to the Big Ten. This is what we're going to do. It has to be Virginia and Virginia Tech. It can't be one going to one conference and one going to the other. The Florida State Money Perch, before we talk to the Virginia Money Perch, the Florida State Money Perch says, because we said some things and he shot back to us, you guys are wrong about something. There will be no coordination between the SEC and the Big Ten. None. It's never happened before, except for when the Big 12 had to figure it way out, and Fox had to be made whole, and SEC had to be made whole, and they fought tooth and nail. There's not going to, if the ACC implodes, there's not going to be any coordination. Florida State knows that through their communications, off the record, indirect communication with these conferences, trying to figure out their value, what they could get. There is no coordination between Fox and ESPN, Big Ten and SEC. And the Florida State Money Perch says there's nobody going to take Virginia without taking Virginia Tech. Nobody's going to go through this taking Virginia and then hopes the other conference takes Virginia. It's all or nothing. And we said, really? He gave us a very important, significant impactful, powerful person that's associated with University of Virginia athletics. We had some sort of connection with this gentleman. The gentleman found out about who I was and all this stuff, and I never directly communicated to him, but he communicated to PTM, and he said there is no way that Virginia can go someplace without Virginia Tech. They have been told this, and it would take it's just not going to happen. Part of the reason why Virginia has been maybe possibly silent in all this. So if SEC, when the ACC implodes, the state of Virginia, Virginia Tech and Virginia are going to be one way or the other, SEC or the Big Ten. This is Florida State's perception of what's happening, and of course, and then this is the money perch Virginia guy telling us this is exactly how it is. You're not going to be able to split us up. This is not UCLA, California. It's too... They won't let us, they will not let Virginia go to the Big Ten. They will not let Virginia go to the SEC. It's an all or nothing proposition. It's not even a matter of a question. That's the way it is. So if you are part of the college football community, if you want to ask your Virginia beat writer, your Virginia Tech beat writer, you want to go whatever, ask whatever questions you need to do, ask them. Ask your athletic director. You're not going to get an answer, but you know what I'm saying. So we went 3 days on this one question because it's important. 3 days we spent on this one question. Back and forth. Said, nope, not going to happen. This guy would know. If you can know the future, this person knows it. So we said, when the athletic, so we questioned about the Attorney General, and he says it's more than the Attorney General. Way more than the Attorney General. It's the internal politics of the state of Virginia, the Commonwealth. It's an all or nothing proposition. So Big Ten, if you want Virginia, you got to take both. SEC, if you want Virginia Tech, you got to get both. It's not going to get split. And back to the Florida State money perch, and back to the other people that we've talked to, as now we're on to this story, we get all this confirmation back to us, even from somebody not a money perch person, a reporter, saying, yes, this is how we believe it is as well. This is it's an all or nothing proposition. No, for the example he said is like, I'm talking about a person in the business of reporting college sports. He cannot see. He can see interest from both SEC and the Big Ten to Virginia. But he can't see either one of them taking Virginia and believing that they could get them without needing to take Virginia Tech as well. In other words, this is kind of known. This is a known thing. It's not going to happen. They're not going to get split. Going back to the Florida State money perch. Still believing first quarter 2024. Now hang with me here. 2024. He believes, because he talks to other people at Florida State, talking to people at Clemson, we've told you about it, talking now, he has this gentleman that he has shown us through the door to the certain Virginia money perch. He believes this thing happens in two waves. This ACC implosion happens in two ways. The first implosion is Florida State, Clemson. And we've had Florida State and Clemson at the center of the stage, right? In the Holy Smokes Theater. We've had them in the center. No one else has been on the stage. That's how we're going to keep it. That's how we're going to keep it. Florida State and Clemson. That's going to be the first wave. He doesn't believe that North Carolina, the people we talked to, and the sense, we've talked to North Carolina people because the hockey, we'll leave that out for this discussion for now. But Florida State, Clemson is going to be part of the first wave. Somehow signaling that their intentions are, they're going to be notifying their intentions to leave the ACC in some way, somehow. First quarter 2024. Then there's going to be a second wave of North Carolina and the Virginia schools. That's what is believed that's going to happen. North Carolina, incredibly well. They might have the largest value of all the ACC schools between them and Florida State. But they're not going to be part of this first wave. This is December 7th update. Could it change? Will it change? If it does change, we'll report it to you. But North Carolina is not where Clemson and Florida State's at. We talked about the alignment problem. They don't even have a chancellor. But they also have an alignment problem. And Virginia schools are a whole nother, we might as well starting to think of them as a pair. Going forward. We are here at Peek Around the Corner. Because of what we've been told and the manner we were told it and the strength that we were told it from a person that would know. So in the Holy Smokes Theater, Clemson and Florida State are at the center of the stage where Colorado was alone all those months. And we were, as you know, we were dead on accurate on that story. North Carolina is not up on that stage with those two schools. North Carolina in the first row. In the second row, Virginia and Virginia Tech are sitting with each other. Right next to each other. Virginia and Virginia Tech. So is this good news for Virginia Tech versus all the other Holy Smokes Theater seating arrangement? Sure. I think you can take that, yes. Doesn't mean that it's going to happen for Virginia Tech, but they are tied to the hip. So North Carolina is in the first row, Virginia Tech's in the second row. In the fifth row is North Carolina State and Miami of Florida. Now, does this mean North Carolina State and North Carolina are tied to the hip? We know that North Carolina State has a lot of political power. We titled the show Politics, More Politics and Relationship. It could end up being that way, but we haven't had this same type of communication in regards to North Carolina and North Carolina State that we just had with Virginia and Virginia Tech. Now, there's probably a whole bunch of people in Virginia right now saying, we knew this, Greg. There's probably a bunch of Virginia Tech Hokies says, we know this. Virginia can't go anywhere without us. Well, we did not know that. We speculated on it. We read what the Attorney General said about it. But now we've been told by, I'm sorry, but a person that we're going to have to trust on this. And Florida State seems to have the same perceived notion. We also were told that there's nothing that it's impossible. It's impossible to believe that anything could happen before the first quarter of 2024. We would be shook if something happened next week. We were told we've been being told this for months, obviously, because we're the ones who have said the first quarter 2024. We've been saying this for almost 12 months, since December 26, 2022. The calendar, people are not around. When Florida State signals their intentions, they're going to hit the floor running. You can't hit the floor running in the last month in December, going into the holidays, the way the semesters and quarters are all laid out. So nothing has changed. Nothing has changed from what we are being told on the planning of what Florida State and Clemson's going to do. It's always been the first quarter 2024. But it doesn't seem like, for now, the perception is, it doesn't seem like there's going to be another school that's going to be bull rushing the ACC right after Florida State and Clemson does it. Like I have been believing this whole time. Doesn't seem like that's going to happen. So that's the major update for the Holy Smokes Theater. Now, we have spent a lot of time on this. You might think, well, this is not a significant change, but for us it is. We've speculated that maybe these two teams could not be broken up. Maybe if one was taken by one conference, the other would have to be taken by... They both have to be taken by the same conference. They're not going to be split apart. Politicians are going to be involved in this. The realignment decisions, the politicians are going to be more involved in this than any realignment we've seen. Couple reasons why. College football is changing drastically. You saw what Charlie Baker just said. And by the way, his proposal. By the way, if you saw Ross Dellinger's report today, he says, believe it or not, and he said this in the original article, but he repeated it today. Ross Dellinger, go into his tweets. Believe it or not, there's traction. This actually might happen in Congress, where they pass a law, where they codify, where they carve out a certain carve out for college athletics, where they don't have to have the student athletes be employees. This actually might happen. I know that sounds crazy because they're not going to actually vote in. This ain't good. I know Greg Sankey's upset. He's upset about everything, by the way. I know a lot of people are upset that Charlie Baker did not give them the heads up. Charlie Baker said over and over again, this is a starting point in conversation. A lot of schools, even in the Power Autonomy 4 conference, are saying this is a whole lot of money. How are we going to find this money? But they needed to be bold enough to get the Congress on board. Another lawsuit has come through the back window on the NCAA and these power autonomy conferences. Another lawsuit today. They're going to keep coming until there's a federal bill to protect them. And that's why whatever Charlie Baker and these commissioners and presidents decide on, it has to be big enough, bold enough. It has to go all the way to the line without having student athletes be employees, because right now the commissioners don't want it, but be big enough to where there's no salary cap. The compensation level is going to be real high for these student athletes to get Congress on board. So, in other words, as we have stated since episode 1 of this YouTube channel, the manifesto, we said the straw that is stirring the drink is the student athletes are going to get higher and higher compensation. It's going to be more and more expensive to play, to compete at the highest level of college football, basketball, women's hockey, softball, everything. Because some of these schools are going to target some of their money to these other sports. So it's more important than ever, for these universities, the athletic directors, the front porch of these universities, to get as much value as they can. They get as much money in media money, sponsorship, exposure, as much money as they can. Because that money, higher and higher percentage of that money is going to go to the student athletes. So this next realignment, the ACC implosion, is going to be a little bit different because there's more at stake than ever. More at stake than ever. So, more money at stake than ever. And that money advantage is going to be used for more advantage than ever before. This is not about having enough money to where you can add another water fountain, majestic waterfall to your athletic village. This is about having extra money so you can give it to your student athletes, so you can get better student athletes, so you can win more games, create more value, and have more regular students come to your university because of all the championships and winning that you do. There's more at stake than ever. So the politicians are going to be more involved than ever. And we've been told the politicians of the state of Virginia are not going to allow Virginia and Virginia Tech to be split up. Ryan Willie, thank you so much for your super chat. I appreciate your generosity to the channel. Lockdown Big 12 is saying that the Big 12 Commission is trying to purge the ACC if it implodes. Do you see Florida State, North Carolina, and Duke going to the Big 12? Florida State and North Carolina are not going to the Big 12. Will the Big 12 try to eat at ACC's table? Absolutely. For the same reasons Big 12 ate at the Pac-12 table. It's about strengthening your confidence to make sure you are in the room to vote on the future of college athletics. No question about it. Big 12 will be there to see if he can get the scraps at the ACC table. Not going to get Florida State or North Carolina. Duke, that's up for question. Don't know about that one. Thank you for the super chat. Thank you, Ryan. I want to get to your comments and your phone calls. I'm going to go ahead and open up the phone lines right away here. That is your Holy Smokes Theater update. First quarter 2024. It looks like that's the big hot spot. Sounds like it might be coming in two waves. There's a definite delineation between Clemson, Florida State versus the other ACC schools.
Call from
Jamie Thornton.
Jamie Thornton, thanks for calling. Arkansas Razorback, the floor is yours.
Woo, Pig Suey, Greg. How you doing today? Hey, we're excited Bobby's back. So, what can I say, right?
And you should be. You should be.
I want to talk about all this. I've been wanting to call since the first call. And the thing that's funny, I can remember I went to college in the late 90s, right? And the talk has always been, even going back and you probably even know longer than this, why don't we pay the players, right? Why aren't the players getting paid? And one of the biggest things that was always talked about was corruption. Oh, it'll lead to this and that. And I'd always say, how can you be corrupt? How can you – and there's been talks about paying players with a fair system, but how it would lead to this possible corruption and so forth. Well, what have we seen since the NIL, right? We've seen, ironically, SMU buy their way into a Power 5. How ironic is that SMU and the only school to get the death penalty?
Yeah.
We've seen the Pac-12 dissolved, gone. We've seen and there's other reasons for that. I get that. We've seen now the corruption, if you want to call it that, definitely, in my opinion, of the selection committee. And Mike Leach had a great rant about that when that first started. I don't know if anyone's watched that or not when he was at Washington State. but talking about how a committee and deciding things like why even play the games. Mike Leach was so brilliant.
Yeah.
But we see now all this so-called corruption and so forth. It can be traced to money. I mean, it's just gotten out of hand. And I was watching a podcast the other night, and it was so great. They were talking about the viewership numbers, right? Alabama and Georgia drew 17 million viewers for CBS. I mean, it was insane.
Yeah.
And so what do you think is going to happen on top of course, not only ESPN? I'm not saying ESPN and the SEC, and we have to have an SEC team. Of course, that plays part of it. But from a money perspective as well, who do you think is the bigger brand, the bigger draw on TV? Alabama versus Michigan or FSU versus Michigan? And I'm sorry to FSU, they draw a lot of viewership. But Alabama is one of those up there with Michigan, Ohio State, Notre Dame. And that's what this is all about. And you've been trying to say the same thing here today. This is all about dollars. I mean, this is no longer, you can't think old school college athletics anymore of, let's say, like a Miami and so forth going to the SEC. Well, guess what? If that draws the money in, if that's where these people want, that's what's going to happen. This isn't about old traditions anymore. This isn't about old rivalries, regional rivalries. This is a big business now. And that's just the way it is. I mean, unfortunately, college football, I mean, as great as it is and we all love it, it's now the second highest revenue producing sport behind the NFL. It's more than MLB. It's more than the NBA. And these networks, I hate to tell you, they're the ones that's paying the big money for it and bringing the viewership in. It's like you said, it's going to be very political at this point.
Yeah.
So, and another thing, you know, I heard that with these on the transfer portal, some of these quarterbacks, we're talking about schools paying millions of dollars to get almost like a free agency to get these players, to get them to come to their school. And so people need to try to forget about when it comes to all this realignment stuff. I think I sent you a great article the other day about the eventual split that's coming. I mean, you can just see it. You can just see the writing on the wall. With you know, the control of the Big Ten and the SEC, because these major brands, these major school brands are gonna go to the Big or the SEC that's in the ACC. There is no doubt about it.
Yeah.
And like you said, you know, the Big 12 is not going to get UNC. They're not going to get Florida State. They're not going to get Clemson. It's just not going to happen because there's just too much money involved, and they're going to go with everything else. So it's so funny looking back on it now, and the idea of paying players, and I was like, well, you know, they generate a lot of money even back then, but man, we've just seen all these things, the writings on the wall about how much money is involved here, and it's gotten to that point. It's gotten so big that, hey, I mean, yeah, the Florida State gets shafted, yeah, but there's more to it. There's a lot more to it than just ESPN, the SEC. It's also about money figures and viewership. So
yeah.
But I just leave you with that. Woo Pig Suey. And, man, yeah, FSU, obviously, like you said, FSU, they are hot. Obviously, they would prefer to go to the Big Ten over the SEC. They're not happy with ESPN. But at this point, they just want to get the hell out of the ACC. Yeah. Period.
Yeah.
I mean, that's from everything I've seen. They are so mad, obviously. And the writing was on the wall. You don't think that all the commissioners – not the commissioners, all the presidents and athletic directors from all these ACC schools we're talking about, these Magnificent Seven, didn't pay attention to what happened to FSU. Yeah. They all know. Yeah. They all know now. We have to get out of here.
It's why Texas and Oklahoma called Greg Sankey. They didn't call Greg Sankey because it was going to be easier to win a SEC conference championship versus the Big 12. There's a reason why Texas and Oklahoma called the SEC in 2019. And this is the reason why. Everything that is happening right now. They wanted, so this is just another phase of it. But thank you, Jamie.
Thank you, Greg. I appreciate you. You're great. You have a good one, man.
Beautiful call. Thank you. Now, What I would disagree with some people on the message boards and on X and everywhere else is I don't think we're close to a P2 world in which playoff access is denied to everybody else.
Call from
Ryan Thomas.
Ryan Thomas, can you hold just
to
1
accept,
second? I
press
just want
1.
to finish the
To
statement.
send a voicemail, press 2.
Ryan, can you hold on a second?
Sure, Greg.
I just want to finish the statement. A lot of people playing a shell game out there when it comes to P2. P2 for me is, yes, the SEC and the Big Ten are going to be the most powerful conferences, the most powerful brands, whatever, right? Money, power, they can push. But it's not going to be a P2 in the sense of it's only going to be SEC and the Big Ten's schools in the playoffs. That's not what's going to happen. Big 12, ACC, I still believe G5 schools are going to get playoff access, at least in the next, after the 2026 contract. So watch people when they mix up these two P2 descriptions. You know, they bounce back and forth. We've been pretty clear here at Peek Around the Corner. Yes, of course, consolidation. Big Ten was going to grow. We told you it was going to grow. We were the ones who said Oregon and Washington. We said USC. You know, and we said that the Big 12 had to go after the Pac-12 schools for survival, to make sure they're in the room. Consolidation. But we're not heading to a P2 world where the Big Ten and the Big Ten and the SEC goes off in their own universe. There's too much value. There's too much money. There's too much institution. Greg Sankey doesn't even want that. He has said it over and over again. So, anyways, Ryan, the floor is yours. Thanks for your call. Appreciate it.
Hey, Greg. Wow. I've got some whiplash here. The head's been on a swivel, and it's been left and right, back and forth. And you know, I don't know who to sue now, Greg. Maybe I should ask the state of Florida who I should sue. But I just wanted to touch upon a couple things. You had mentioned, or we had talked about earlier, about the NCAA proposal by Charlie Baker, and you know, you've gone over all the details now. You know, I think based on kind of what's been said, I think that's a discussion starter. Nothing's going to get passed next month at the NCAA convention. I think you're probably looking at, if something does come out of the NCAA, it's probably going to come a year from January or so. In the next year, they'll be trying to align interest and to get congressional support and tie that all down and get certainty. And I think what people need to realize is the NCAA is mainly doing this they're trying to get control of the situation. And I think that does not quell the concerns that student athletes have had in all these lawsuits. Basically, they might view it from that perspective as if the NCAA is just trying to look to get basically a carte blanche to continue abusing them, so to say, in their terms. Not my terms, but how they would probably view it. And I think the student athletes, you know, they're going to want to push for something that's more of an employee, model, something that gives them the ability to collectively bargain and things like that. And, I think that there's a lot to be said, and I'm just going to say nothing is happening in the next month. Nothing, because
okay.
I mean,
can I interrupt you right there, Ryan?
Go ahead.
I actually think something is going to happen. Maybe not by this January, but I don't think they're going to go all the way into the next January.
Well,
because of this, the lawsuits are just. They're being filed like crazy right now. I mean, and I actually think at some point there's a law of diminishing returns on these laws. Like, I believe now these are kind of favoring these universities, these conferences, NCAA, because the Congress sees that, geez, this is getting out of hand. I think they actually are going to act, maybe not by this January, but soon after.
Well, I don't disagree with you there, but my point is the convention is once a year, unless they call a special convention sometime.
I think they will call something special. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's a possibility. But I think what's happening right now is the discussion starter, and I think in this January, I mean, that's when you're gonna see kind of the sausage making commence, and you know, it's gonna be kind of a messy thing, because I don't know how this is gonna come out. I don't know how this will work as far as with, you know, Title IX and how they're going to make that all work. There's going to be concerns about that, and I think that there's going to be quite a bit of hamburger making here, Greg. So it's going to. I think that ultimately the final product is yet to be seen, and there's going to be a lot of hands in the kitchen. But I do agree that things are coming, and especially with the House case coming out or coming. That's going to be heard in the district court, federal district court next month, I believe. And, you know, that'll go through the appellate process. And I think that, you know, that will shape what goes on with this. And it's going to be an interesting, there's going to be a lot of swerves and curves. It's going to be a roller coaster. And, you know, ultimately, I mean, I don't think this happens, but you know, ultimately, and I want to underscore this again for all those of you that are going to freak out for me saying this. Ultimately, probably the best solution would be is to have a break off and have it done as a club sport amateur type situation where you have player salaries, and to be part of the club, you have to be attending that university. And then, you know, after deducting player salaries and bonuses and all that, they donate the profits to the university's athletic department. They get split evenly to male and female athletes all over the place. I don't know. That might be a better way to do it. I'm just spitballing. So, you know, I don't know if we get to that point. Maybe that's 20 years down the road. But right now, I think they're going to continue on trying to muddle something together. But, you know, there's going to be some unintended consequences, and there's going to be some unforeseen roadblocks that are going to pop up. So it's going to. This is a work in process, and
Yep.
you know, I don't think this is going to be solved for all time in the next 2 or 3 years. I think eventually they'll get to something. You know, and taking us to conference realignment. You know, with Virginia and Virginia Tech, you know, if they're going to be bound together by the state. And by the way, I'm pretty knit in tight too with Virginia politics, and yes, the governor himself is going to make this an issue if there tries to be a split of the two.
Yeah.
So I mean, you know, this is going to. I mean, there are some pretty high powers in the state that both the governor and then, you know, Mark Warner legislatively. You know, might try to get involved in something, get involved on the federal level. So there's a lot of stuff that's going to happen. And if Virginia is doing something like that, you can bet your buttons that UNC and NC State will be tied together politically, because down in Raleigh, NC State runs the show. UNC has the money, but NC State runs the show. And you know, they're going to make sure that they get their piece. So ultimately, it just might be that the ACC stays together as a whole. They could lose Florida State and Clemson, just like the Big 12 lost Texas and Oklahoma. But like the Big 12, you know, with UNC and others, they'll continue on. And, you know, they'll continue on, whether, you know, they might grab a Tulane or a South Florida or something like that. But you know, but they'll continue on, and, you know, I think probably for the next 10 years, we're probably still going to have probably an A4 type setup, and, you know, you know, who knows what we get for 26 on. It might go down to, you know, it'll probably stay to 5 and 7, but I certainly think that with the political with the political ties that I just mentioned, there's also going to be university ties, because UVA and UNC are very tightly knit together in a lot of academic pursuits and research and things like that. So, like you said, what happens with the UNC chancellor is going to be a good indication of what happens. And with all that said, I think the networks probably would only pay pro rata to the Big Ten for FSU and Clemson, and that might be the bolt that happens. Does the SEC try to expand? Well, I don't know if ESPN is going to pay the money to do that. So it's a brave new world, Greg.
Yeah.
It's a brave new world,
Yeah.
and I certainly think that I'm kind of convinced at this point that the ACC is probably going to lose Clemson and Florida State in the short term, and I don't know if UNC can, unless politically things change, unless they can get themselves extricated, and what will happen with that. I mean, it's anyone's guess. I mean, I'm sure that maybe potentially Georgia Tech and Miami could be on the table for the Big Ten, but I think that's a really last resort type thing. So I think Clemson and FSU, and I think the Big Ten will take Clemson. If we go towards consolidation, Greg, there's less wiggle room for the presidents to be picky about academics, because ultimately the networks pay for the brands, and they don't care about that. So I think people need to kind of, there are connections and there are associations, but those don't have to be connected and synonymous to sports. I think that's ridiculous, and I think there will be a paradigm shift in that, because ultimately, who pays the money, and especially as we get more into streaming, where you're going to have a lot of this content, off on, sponsored by a streamer but specific to a school. It's going to be a lot different. But anyway, that's all I've got, Greg. Great job on the show, and have a great day. And I'd love to hear Immaculate's thoughts. Hopefully he calls in. So take care, everyone.
Thank you, Ryan. Appreciate it. Great call. Okay, so I'm not going to be taking any calls here for the next couple minutes. I want to get caught up with some super chats and a new membership, and I also want to go through a little bit of an article I went through early this morning on Florida State, former President Thrasher, on what he said, what he hopes that Florida State does next. So I want to get to that article. We gave it to our early peak members first this morning. Now we're going to give it to you all live here on a live show here December 7th. Sergeant Pickles, Washington Huskies, got to go all. Have a great day. Go Dogs. Thank you for your generosity once again, Sergeant Pickles, as he gets ready for the college football playoffs. Go Huskies. Ryan Willie, do you think Notre Dame will join the Big Ten if the ACC implodes? Eventually, I do think they join the Big Ten, but maybe not to 2029. We shall see. Just because they got a new contract doesn't mean they stay independent. A new media contract doesn't mean they stay independent to 2029. But I don't think necessarily now the ACC implodes and Notre Dame makes a sudden move. We shall see. Thank you for the super chat, Ryan. Appreciate your generosity. John Till, Tulane and Rice are obvious for the ACC. But before South Florida, I would suggest helping out the West Wing with Oregon State, Washington State. I agree. If you're going to be an autonomy conference, ACC, if you do implode, if you need to do more backfilling, I would first look at Oregon State and Washington State, then Tulane. Now, I don't know about Rice, but Tulane, Oregon State, and Washington State would be my next picks for the ACC. Thank you for your super chat, John. I appreciate it so very much. Big Ten fan, thank you for your early peak membership. Thank you so very much. You are hereby knighted, cloak and dagger style. Thank you Big Ten fan. For those who are wondering what Early Peak membership is all about, and we're going to show you an article that we did in our Early Peak episode number 8 this morning. We're going to show it to you live, everybody here in this live show. Early Peak membership. College football's Early Peak. We do episodes. Open for everybody, of course, on major topics throughout college football. College football's Early Peak, Cloak and Dagger, is for membership only. We have just one level membership, $5.99 a month. You'll be dropping in early mornings, once in a while during the month. We've already done 8 so far in the 2.5 weeks we've been doing this. We give you a drop of the first information on an important article or information that we have. We talk about recruiting, stadium renovations. We go into topics that we don't quite cover on our live shows and our episodes. But the information, there is some information, a little bit, just to give you a sneak peek, give you a little bit of a nugget of from sources. This is where you're going to see it first, at College Football's Early Peak. So if you are interested in becoming an Early Peak member of College Football's Peak Around the Corner, just hit the join button. Thank you so very much. I want to hit this article, and then we're going to get to your phone calls. We're going to open up the lines once again, real quick. I just want to get into this here. This was interesting. From the Tallahassee Democrat, former President Thrasher says Florida State needs to lead the ACC. Playoff committee caved to pressure. Former Florida State President John Thrasher believes the Seminoles' exclusion from the college football playoff shows the school needs to leave the Atlantic Coast Conference. Thrasher also believes the college football playoff committee caved into pressure from ESPN and the Southeastern Conference when it announced its 4 playoff teams Sunday. Undefeated ACC champion Florida State 13-0 was the odd team out of the college football playoffs behind unbeaten Michigan and Washington and one-loss teams Texas and Alabama. The Seminoles' controversial omission sent shockwaves through college football, calling into question the integrity of the system and pecking order of the Power 5 conferences. And this is the PATC money shot of this article. It gives me hope. The leadership at Florida State will look at other places to be. I think it shows we are a secondary level conference, Thrasher said. Now, Thrasher is a former president of Florida State. He retired in 2021. So President Thrasher, he knows the players at Florida State. He knows who sits in the board of trustees. This omission, as horrific as it was for Florida State, it cost them about $6 million right off the top. But through this, it gives me hope the leadership at Florida State will look at other places to be. I think it shows we are in a secondary level conference. That is former Florida State President John Thrasher. We went through a little bit more of the article in our Early Peak episode 8 this morning. I wanted to present all to you that in the Tallahassee Democrat. So you have voices in the past, recent past, piling on, putting their logs on the fire, saying that Florida State needs to lead the ACC. And none of them are saying we got to wait till 2036 when the grant of rights goes out. None of them are saying we got to wait another 7 years in 2030. They're saying we got to leave now. And so what? So what, you say, Greg? So what? He's not the president now. He left in 2021. And more voices piling on there in Tallahassee gives more and more political coverage, more political cover to the ones who have to make the decisions. The president, the board of trustees, being advised by the athletic director, being advised by the booster. The next piece of information that we at Peek Around the Corner, the next piece of information that we are waiting on is, and how do I say this? The next piece we're waiting on, we know that there has been FOIAs put out on, has Florida State University made a business arrangement, hired business arrangement with an investment firm. That's the next piece that we're waiting for a report on. We're not going to report on that. We're going to report on the reporting of that story. Just going to give you a little peek. Just giving you a little peek right now. That is something that we're waiting on here at Peek Around the Corner. Okay, let's get back. Thank you, Big Ten fan, for your membership. I appreciate it. Let's get back to the phone calls. Let me open up the lines again. I appreciate it. Just had to get through all that. 763-260-1333. And let me add, I understand Alabama and Michigan is a bigger game than Florida State and Michigan. But I believe Florida State should have been in the 4-team invitational. No question about it. Lewis, Mr. Duke Blue Devil. It looks like the Dukies have hired the new head coach, Mr. Diaz. What are you thinking, sir?
I think it's a solid hire.
Yeah.
Considering where Duke was in 2008 when they hired Cutcliffe, the team had won 4 total games in the prior 4 years. And it's now a much better job at getting the top defensive coordinator with the top defense this year. Also, head coaching experience at Miami, which he was fired, but he was fired for records that if he accomplished similar at Duke would be fine with. Now, I don't know if he will, but no, I believe it's a good hire now as a matter of how much you keep of the players, of the staff. It's so difficult to change coaches. That's why the coaching carousel has been relatively small this year. People, if it's marginal, aren't firing coaches because they're worried they're going to lose half of their players to the portal. And so it's kind of been a good coach job preservation. But no, it's a good hire for Duke. I just was listening to Florida State. I just want to say, I'm so sick and tired of hearing about Florida State whining. In 1993, they were the complete opposite side of this. West Virginia won all the games on the field, did everything they could do to earn a spot in the national championship game. Florida State complained and campaigned, Bobby Bowden, Lee Corso, and others. The media has to vote Florida State number one, even though Florida State had lost to Notre Dame, because Florida State was the better team on the field than West Virginia. Florida State got in and won a national championship. If they had followed the same arguments Florida State is using in 2023, in 93, there's no Florida State championship. Nebraska and West Virginia would have played for the title. So I have absolutely no sympathy for them. They don't remember. I mean, maybe younger people don't remember this, but if you're old enough to remember 93, they were on the other end of it. So I'm kind of glad to see that they know how it feels now to be on the other side of the argument. Now, they're a much more established program than West Virginia is, and they've won titles. And it sounds like they're going to use this as a means to get out of the ACC. And that brings me then to my next point. And I spent some time here recently. Actually was at North Carolina for the North Carolina Duke game. It just occurs to me, just being at the campus, looking at the situation there, that's not an SEC program in any way. They might be a Big Ten program, but North Carolina and Duke, while they are rivals actually have a lot in common. They're both very top academic schools. And it's not going to be easy. I mean, my understanding, and I don't know if this has ever been substantiated, but at least I had some pretty strong sources back 11, 12 years ago that Carolina was offered to the Big Ten and declined back when Maryland got the spot, or the other teams were, and they chose to stay in the ACC. Now, the money's different.
North
and I'm
Carolina
sure
and Virginia could have taken those spots if they wanted.
Yeah,
Yes.
and they didn't because there's, to some degree, money. I mean, for one thing, North Carolina's never going, or Virginia, those programs are never going to compete with Alabama and Georgia. I think that's the realization with this announcement. A lot of people are evaluating, are we really going to compete with Alabama and Georgia and be professional football schools? And so I would not be shocked if it's a very slow process to break up the ACC. Now, Florida State and Clemson leaving, that's foreseeable and likely will happen, at least for Florida State's end and probably for Clemson. But it gets a little tougher because politically, North Carolina and NC State share a border regions. You mentioned the Virginia Tech situation, and they have the long-time history that goes back to the 50s with Duke and Wake Forest. I don't think it's going to be that easy or that quick just to break up the ACC, to break up that group of schools. That's what the SEC and Big Ten want, because what they want to do is someday be able to control the entire country. At this point, they wouldn't have North Carolina, Virginia, or the Rocky Mountains. They'd have everything else if they ever wanted to someday do a Power 2 in a few years. So they want into that territory, and they'll get there eventually because money still ultimately talks. But it will not be easy because North Carolina and Virginia are also tremendous academic schools, and Duke's academic. When this news came out about the higher division, I'm sure Duke would opt in, but it's not an easy call for Duke because Duke's an academic school first. They would probably do it because of the basketball team, but there are a lot of people evaluating that you just can't compete with some of these schools that are just getting the top players. And we'll see what happens with that down the road. Some schools are still happy to be academic schools and will still have plenty of money. But it's going to be an interesting time, to say the least. But, I mean, this issue with Florida State, I mean, they were on the other side of this before. They seem to forget that, and they will leave. I mean, this was already in the makings before this snub, if you will.
Yeah.
And they will leave. And I don't know what will happen with Charlie Baker's proposal. You do have to get Congress involved in that, is my understanding. It's not that simple, but at the end of the day, it's not as good as it used to be. I mean, there's like, for example, West Virginia basketball got decimated by the transfer portal, and so I don't even watch, because why do you want to watch a program that has 5 players? So there's a lot of bad, and there is some good with the current system. Some things have to be changed, or you do start to lose fans. There's a lot of competition for entertainment dollars. With that said, it'll be fascinating to see what happens. I appreciate your updates. And yes, Duke, for a football program that for decades was just completely irrelevant, they've, I believe, done very well for themselves with the head coach. And a lot of special student athletes go to school there. They may not be professional players, but they will be professionals in life and very successful by achieving a degree from Duke. Have a great day, Greg.
You got it. Thank you, sir. Beautiful call. Lewis, PATC legend. Thank you so much. Great call once again. Holy smokes. Awesome Lawson clips. They need to quit playing around and expand the playoffs to something like 32 to 48 teams, just my opinion. If they did that, my Gophers still wouldn't make the playoffs.
Call from
Immaculate.
Immaculate. Can you hold on 1 second, sir?
Sure.
Thank you, sir. I do appreciate it. I got to get through some crab cakes and football. Thank you for the super chat. Pecking order just got shuffled for SEC, the Big Ten. I think that's a good short way of explaining the information. If you believe it, if you believe that's the end result, where Virginia and Virginia Tech cannot get spliced up, they're tied at the hip. Maybe it does shuffle a bit what the SEC would want and what the Big Ten would want. That's a great comment. Thank you for the super chat. I appreciate it. Once again, for everybody who's new to the channel, please subscribe to the channel. Make sure you hit the notification bell so you're notified when we come on live, because we can come on live at any time. Episodes, live shows, and please smash the like button. Immaculate, Mr. Hawkeye, the floor is yours.
Man, this is pretty nice. It's almost like you're getting the gang back together again, hearing some folks coming back and calling.
Yes. Lewis, beautiful.
Yeah, it's good to hear him. Real quick, I mean, I know we touched upon this a little bit on X, actually, going about the Oresco retirement.
Yes.
Maybe I have a bit of a jaded view of it, but I actually think that this is more symbolic that he made a bit of a mistake. I don't think things panned out quite the way that they were supposed to, and now we got Liberty and the Coosa, and they're looking like they're going to dominate that thing for a while, and there is no way to pull them out of there in time for the 2024 and 25 seasons. So by him agreeing to go 5+7 instead of 6+6, he might have voted the AAC out of the CFP. And, that's just my opinion. It's, that may end up not happening. Maybe Liberty loses so much that they don't. But they seem to be pretty strong at the top of the Conference USA in terms of their capabilities of rebuilding and staying at the top. So, especially if New Mexico State loses Jerry Kill. I don't know. Are you hearing anything about that considering his old Minnesota ties?
No, I haven't heard anything. Liberty has way more resources than anybody in the Conference USA. They're probably going to be at the top of the conference. But to say that they're going to dominate the G5, just my opinion, but to say that they're going to dominate that G5 top-ranked conference champion to get into the college football playoffs, I mean, because of their strength of schedule that was so low, they basically needed help. They basically needed Tulane to lose that second AAC game to get in, right? So I don't know if anyone's going to dominate that spot in the G5. But maybe if there is one school that will, Liberty's a really good candidate for it. But I just don't think anyone's going to dominate it. Just my opinion.
Yeah, but the AAC already had the Mountain West to compete against for that spot.
Yep.
I mean, that was not like a shoe-in for the AAC. I mean, Tulane was clearly their dog going forward, but someone could rise out of the Mountain West to compete against that, and that was already kind of a given. But now you've got Liberty and Conference USA, who I'm just saying they stand out in that conference more than anyone else does. And I didn't want to go in deep on that. I
agree.
Think that he might have. It's just interesting that went through before this happened, and then this happened soon after, and retirement. Who knows? In terms of the Jim Harbaugh deal, that whole clause with him not being able to leave if he signs it, I don't even know how that's enforceable. But if that's true, that pretty much tells us that he has been looking to go, and they found out.
Yeah.
And please don't go. Please don't go. And if he's looking to go, we'll leave that to people to decide on their own what they think that means. But I think it means something. I'll leave it at that. I don't know.
I think you're onto something. Yeah.
Yeah. That was a bit of an eye opener. Like, wait, you're going to put what into that? But anyways, now in terms of the big story, that's very interesting that you got those, added connections, and a lot of us in chat were talking. It's like this kind of screws up our whole projections. It certainly screws up. I've been going the whole UNC, UVA go north, Virginia Tech, NC State go south. They get split. They go to equal type of conferences, bada bing, bada boom. If that's not possible, and number one, if Florida State's really truly going to go to the Big Ten over all of this that's happening, then I don't think North Carolina can be the single school that goes with them because of what you just said. Because if that happens, if SEC and the Big Ten aren't playing together, that affects things. I kind of assume eventually they're going to have to maybe work together on this. But if Big Ten's taking Florida State, there's no reason for SEC to help out. So I still have a problem with the idea of Clemson to the Big Ten. I know people are like, oh, the value, but even we saw it with Washington and Oregon. The Big Ten academically everyone there is fine with Washington. They wanted Washington. They wanted Washington for a while. Oregon was mostly, from all reportings I've seen, I haven't seen anyone say it otherwise, was the network's pick. Fox wanted Oregon, right? I mean,
Yeah.
pretty straightforward. In this case, I would look at Florida State. That's not going to make the university people happy. That's going to make the networks happy. It's going to make Fox and all of them very happy. So then I look at that and I say, well, the same Big Ten situation happens where, okay, now we got to make university people happy. I don't think Clemson does that. That's Clemson, Florida State's a pure network grab. And that's, maybe that happens, but I tend to still go with the old method, which is, okay, which one makes the universities happy so that they come to terms with, Fox and whomever else. I think that's Georgia Tech. And I think that they could get away with that on the cheap, like very cheap. I mean, that's a buy low type of a deal where right now people don't think too highly of them, but they're doing better. They're bringing their football team into actually, running what kind of offense they want to run. They're making investments. So I think Georgia Tech wants to do something. In terms of, as Tony says, never be worth it. The future is unknown. Right now, yeah, they're not going to get a full share, but they are going to get you a location in Atlanta. And when Tallahassee is just right south of Georgia, you basically bookend a very important state in Georgia, an undervalued state. Most people don't think of that. They think of Florida, they think of Texas, but Georgia is right up there. And if you get both Georgia and Florida, what else do you need? Like, who cares? I mean, we've got California. They went way out on California. Well, if you take Florida and Georgia, the Big Ten doesn't really need any more from the South. And with USC, Oregon, Washington, and FSU, if you look at all four of those ads, if we're considering Florida State as part of it, that's a lot of power you've just added at the top end in terms of your football program hierarchy. You add Clemson to that, it's actually starting to get top-heavy. So I don't know what you think about that, but I actually think GT helps keep the balance that we know is important in the Big Ten. I mean, they added Nebraska, Penn State, then they added Maryland, Rutgers. I mean, they try to keep things a little balanced, just because it works a little better when you're trying to get your most valuable programs to actually make it to the end of the season. But I don't know. Is that something that you would see as a possibility in this? Is there anything you've heard that they might sneak in and surprise everyone with a GT grab?
I haven't heard GT in any of. No one has mentioned Georgia Tech to me.
Yeah.
What has been mentioned to us, and we reported it at the time, shortly after it became official that Washington and Oregon were going to be the 17th and 18th Big Ten school, is the next Big Ten expansion runs through Columbus, Happy Valley, and Ann Arbor. So if you think Georgia Tech, is that something that Ohio State, Penn State, Michigan would get behind? I don't know. I have no idea. I'm just saying that is the. I would have never said this immaculate in all the years, and I never have. One school, no matter how powerful you are in the Big Ten, you do not have veto power. Your one vote cannot stop something like expansion from happening. Ohio State was not in favor of Washington and Oregon. That was reported right after it happened. But in return, they are calling the shots on this next Fox, yes, of course they are. Big Ten presidents across the scale, yes, they're calling the shots on this. But in particular, Ohio State is calling the shots on this. If Georgia Tech is something, for whatever reason, the university, Ohio State would accept, then it could happen. For whatever reason, Georgia Tech is not on the lips of Ohio State Buckeyes, and it's not going to happen.
Yeah. I just think it's logistically a better choice than Clemson. I mean, it's Atlanta, so we're now building a coast-to-coast conference. Much easier to get to, much easier to handle. If you're looking to recruit kids from the area, it's much easier for them to get to come watch the game. Like if you're going and you're trying to recruit someone from Atlanta, I mean, you don't have to like GT. You just like the fact that, hey, you can come watch us play here and then see what we're about, come meet us, come talk to us. It's a great recruiting location. I'm not saying like they're excited about playing GT, but I just find it to be a better logistical pick than Clemson. And I don't know how excited they would be about bringing both Clemson and Florida State in as far as its challenge to their hierarchy in terms of actual on-field performance and postseason. You give them Big Ten resources, and pretty much the only Southern schools in the Big Ten and all their recruiting advantages with that. If I was Ohio State, I'd be a little worried about it. I mean, Florida State, that's a huge win. I mean, that's Tallahassee, that's Florida, that's a big name that's going to pay for the expansion. But beyond that, I don't know, just something to throw out there. And I know a lot of people in chat don't agree with that, and they think Florida State, Clemson, and that's cool. I just think we might be in for a little surprise on that one. In terms of the SEC, what do you think about North Carolina State, Virginia Tech, all to the SEC with half pay? Because then you're basically only adding 2 schools. And if you consider an increase from 8 season games for the conference to 10, not only could that easily be paid for, but I would think that it might even lead to...
I think that's a possibility. And
I think
whatever percentage I would give on that, and I don't know what that would be, 20%, whatever percentage I give that today is higher than I would have given it 4 days ago because of what we were told very strongly, by the way, very strongly. Virginia Tech, if they leave the ACC, they're going to the same conference, whatever that conference is. So, yeah, Immaculate, I think that's a possibility.
I mean, just with FSU leaving alone, I know people are like, oh, they've added Stanford and Cal and SMU and the whole 15-team clause in the contract, and that's all good and well, but that doesn't mean ESPN isn't going to come calling saying, we've run the numbers on this, and this is just not worth the payout anymore. And if that happens, I mean, it is not unheard of for them to then, open up litigation on that. And if you're the ACC, that's your only TV partner. And at some point in time, you are going to need to do a new deal with them. And do you really want them to just be like, yeah, we're going to be done with you in 2036? I think that the situation, once one school, FSU, decides to do this, I think we have a similar situation to the PAC, where beforehand, everyone involved with the PAC was like, no one would ever want to go to the Big 12. That's insane. No one's leaving the PAC. That's insane. We are going to be just fine going forward. Then, USC and UCLA happens, and now people start to question, oh, I don't know. But they're like, oh, no one's going to go to the Big 12. Maybe we'd go to the Big 10, but we won't go to the Big 12. Then Colorado says they're going to the Big 12. And all these, previous rules that were accepted are thrown out the window. And I think the same thing happens here. The same loss of value, the same fear will start to push schools to do things and talk about things that previously people would have thought was impossible. And we'll see how it goes. Very fascinating, though, that you're saying that this is the case, and I have learned the hard way to not doubt you in that regard. So,
well, we're not infallible. That's for sure.
No, I understand.
But we were told this. We did not. We weren't. Let's just put it this way: we were not told that Virginia Tech couldn't be separated. We were not told this, and then we ran out and said this on a live show. We have asked many different ways. this has been a 4 or 5 day conversation. And then we finally said, look, this sounds like this is how it's going to be, according to the perceptions of very important people at the University of Virginia. So,
yeah, I don't know. We'll see how it goes.
Yep.
That changed everything for me, man. So I'm looking at this, and I could be wrong. Maybe it's Florida State, Clemson. I'll go with that. But yeah, right now I'm feeling Florida State, Georgia Tech to the big, and then the NC Virginia schools to the SEC. And that, if that was to happen, that will open up options for the Big 12 that people right now want to say are impossible. And so we'll
very
see.
interesting. Very interesting.
Yep. You have
got
yourself
it.
going, man. Very much appreciate the news today, and talk to you later.
You got it. Beautiful. Thank you, Immaculate. Mr. Hawkeye. Mr. Hawkeye saying North Carolina State, Virginia Tech, SEC, and then Florida State, Georgia Tech to the Big Ten. Maybe Florida State and Miami of Florida into the Big Ten. I'm just going to take the phone off the hook for 1 minute here. I want to get through some comments, some breaking news. Cameron B, does the Virginia Tech news help or hurt AC survival? I don't think it helps or hurt AC survival. I think what it does is, for me, it brackets Virginia and Virginia Tech in the same line of when it comes to being able to land in the Big Ten or the SEC. I would believe this is a little bit of a positive news for Virginia Tech, maybe slightly a little bit negative news for Virginia, but overall it just brackets those two together. If you believe the information that we were given and that we really did investigative work on it. So that's how I would answer that question. Thank you, Cameron B, for once again your continued generosity to Peek Around the Corner. Heartbreak 25 super chat. Hey Greg, on a future show, can you give us your take on the Big Noon versus Game Day battle, since it's a proxy for Big Ten SEC? Sure, I will. Just a short little statement on it. Big Noon is gaining, right? Big Noon is gaining on Game Day. Game Day still has the advantage, but Big Noon is... Fox is seeing some record numbers. They're constantly breaking their records. But anyways, that's how I would say about it right now. We'll do a future show on it. Thanks for the question. There is some breaking news. A lot of people put in the chat. A lot of people have sent me tweets on it. We'll get to it. Since the live show started today, 7 states led by Ohio's Attorney General Dave Yost have filed a federal antitrust lawsuit today challenging the NCAA's transfer eligibility rule. If an injunction were granted, it would prevent the NCAA from denying waivers for immediate eligibility by multi-time transfer athletes. So in other words, if the injunction were granted, the transfer portal explodes even more. Because the only people that can go in the transfer portal right now are grad students, ones whose coaches have left the program. They have a 30-day window to go into the portal. And number 3, one who haven't used up their one-time free transfer eligibility status. One free shot at it. If this injunction happens, everybody can jump in the portal if they desire. Not everybody would, of course, but a lot more names would jump in there. Look, it's open season right now on the NCAA, and I actually believe, as crazy as it sounds, and I bet 90% of you disagree with what I'm about to say, which is fine. About a good 90% of you probably disagree. This is crazy for me to say this. But I actually think Congress is going to pass a bill. Maybe narrowly, maybe just by the skin of the teeth, but because of all these lawsuits, the whole college football, I mean, it's just being, it's being litigated to death, or it's going to get litigated to death. As long as there's some proposal, and Charlie Baker's proposal goes a long ways to it. If there's something so, I don't know what you want to call it, pro-student athletes, so progressive, so, look, this is, we're willing, the student athletes are going to get so much more money, and the Title IX is going to still be established, and look what we're going to do. If it gets so far out there, maybe Congress passes something, a carve out to codify all this stuff happening. I actually think it's going to happen. As crazy as that sounds, I know that's the complete opposite of what I would normally say about Congress. But this is just another lawsuit. There's going to be another lawsuit tomorrow, another one next week. I mean, we're going to destroy college sports, destroy all these scholarships, destroy all these opportunities for student athletes to better themselves, better their family, better the future. We're just going to litigate all this to death. That's not an answer either. So I actually think Congress is going to rise up and do something. I know that's stupid of me. I know that's dumb. I know that's really dumb of me to say that, but that's what I think as of right now. Okay, let me put the phone line. Let me get the phone lines are now open. 763-260-1333. 763-260-1333. Bo Stacker, politics strong-armed, UVA. To get Virginia Tech and the ACC, those schools won't separate. That's what we were told over the last 5 days, 6 days, 7 days.
Call from
ABO prep course 100% refund. If you
Soap is on the line. Soap, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Greg. Today is Pearl Harbor Day, and my thoughts are with the men and women who keep the homeland safe for us.
Thank you, sir.
God bless you, and everything they do for our country. I think, looking at the proposal by the NCAA, it's apparent to me that the NCAA is looking at this like, okay, we're in over our head now. Even the lawsuits you just read about, they're in over their head. And they're going to try to segregate out maybe the top 48 major college football programs, let them run their own show under the guise of the people who run it right now anyway, which is the networks. And then the NCAA keeps their control over the remaining college football programs and all of the baseball, football. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Soap, I apologize.
No worries.
I wanted to, and I'll let you have the floor again. I do not think, and again, I could very well end up being wrong here, Soap, okay? I do not think anybody in the NCAA I don't think anyone's going to say, these are the 48 schools, right? And the rest of you go with under the NCAA umbrella, and these 48 schools are their own organization. I don't think anyone can do that. If they did it, the lawsuits would fly again. I think what they're going to do, and what Charlie Baker's proposal does, is make it really expensive to opt in, to do this 30,000. It's going to be something like that where you're going to have to pay dearly to be part of this, where student athletes can make as much money as possible, no salary cap, to be in this new subdivision. I know there's got to be a better word for it, but I think that's how it's going to happen. I don't think any organization is going to say, oh, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then go all the way up to 48, and you guys are separate from the rest. But go ahead with your you got the floor again, so.
No, I agree completely with you. You're making my point for me.
Okay.
For me, Greg. Yeah, it's not they're not going to say, okay, here's the break off. Texas Tech, you're in, and Georgia Tech, you're out. They're not going to do that. It's going to be a dollar figure, and the manner in which they proposed this $30,000 per player for 2,000 players, that's $6 million a year. That basically segregates out all of the G5 programs. So the G5 programs are out of it. They're not going to be able to afford it. The only people who can afford it are people who have a major contract from, either the ACC, Big 12, one of the let's call them the Power Four now. Okay, so you have to have Power Four money to be in this group, to be able to afford to be in the group. There are going to be some of those schools. I think I looked at the figures, and there are 41 schools that public schools. I don't have access to the private schools, but public schools. 41 public schools that make $100 million or more a year off their sports revenue. And if you use that as a benchmark, that means that there are 40 schools and maybe 8, 10 schools that are private schools that would be able to generate the revenue. So you're right there. There's your 48, because what's driving this whole thing in my mind from a financial standpoint is no one wants to see Vanderbilt play Georgia Tech or Iowa State play West Virginia. They want to see LSU play Ohio State. They want to see Penn State versus Alabama or Florida State versus Texas. And the way you do that is you have your divisions, you have your conferences, but those extra games that you play, if you're part, let's say you have 9 conference games or 8 conference games, say 9 conference games, and that leaves you 3 extra games. Those 3 extra games have to be played within, let's call them the pay-per-play division. All right, they have to be within that pay-per-play division, and that's going to be step one to me. It's if they do something like this, they get rid of the G5, then they start the scheduling, and then after a while. Now, I don't mean to beat a dead horse here, but you know how I stand on relegation.
Yeah.
You could have a upper division and a lower division in this pay-per-play group, but still everybody's getting their money. Whether you're Vanderbilt and you're not in the pay-per-play, you're still getting your money for this cycle from the SEC. But when the new television cycles come around, they're gonna drop out those schools that aren't in the upper division of the pay-for-play, or they're going to pay them less. So I think this is where we're going. And if I could just make 2 comments real quick, one about UVA and Virginia Tech. I think the writings, I think they're going to – UVA is going to be stuck for a while. You just look at what happened with Washington and Washington State. Washington was not going to make a move without Washington State. Well, they said, okay, well, we're not going to take Washington. And the clock started ticking. And suddenly, okay, I guess we don't need to bring you Washington State along. So I think that's what's going to happen with Virginia Tech. The clock's going to start ticking, and UVA is going to say, hey, we better move now, whether we can get along with Virginia Tech or not. That's what I think is going to happen. But once again, I can't tell the future. So
yeah.
The other thing that I haven't had a chance to get in contact with you, but I find it quite interesting that the legal battle with Florida State not getting into the playoffs has not moved into one with forcing the NCAA to make a ruling on Michigan's availability for postseason play. I think that's the only area that Florida State could actually make a push and get into the playoffs. Because ultimately what's going to happen is Michigan's going to be found guilty of breaking the rules. They're going to have to vacate victories, and they're going to vacate their championship. But the games would have already been played, and who cares? And that's pretty much what the networks want. The networks want the lineup they have right now. The only chance that Florida State has is to attack Michigan along the lines of being cheaters. And as I've told you as a Houston Astro fan, this is going to go on for a long time. The people in Florida are not going to let go of the fact that Michigan they cheated and they were kept out of the playoffs because of that. And that's going to be ugly for a long time. But that's it for me. Thank you so much for letting me talk with you, Greg.
You got it,
best
buddy.
Best wishes to you and your family, my friend.
Thank you so much. Crab cakes and football. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. I mean, soap. I'm sorry. I had crab cakes and football written on my notes here. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Thank you, soap. Thank you very much. The phone lines are open, 763-260-1333. And again, and I've said this, like Canes all day says, I get the anger over Florida State getting the college football playoff shot, but the anger is misdirected. There are more ACC ties in the selection committee than the SEC, including the chairman from North Carolina State.
Call from
JD.
JD, can you hold on 1 second? JD.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, can you hold on 1 second?
Sure.
I just want to finish up. And I understand what Lewis said about 1993 and everything. The one, and I don't, I keep going, I keep hitting the dead horse on this, but the whole Florida State Alabama thing, I keep going back to this because I watched a program that was that originates out of the state of Alabama yesterday, and the one thing that people don't talk about is when they're talking about how Alabama's one of the 4 best teams, they should be ahead of the Florida State Seminoles, is they don't talk about Alabama's poor performances during the season. I listened to this radio program and they did not touch upon it once. They didn't talk about the Auburn game. They didn't talk about the South Florida game. They don't talk about anything about Alabama. It's always Alabama's a bigger brand, bring in more money. Florida State is down to the 3rd string quarterback. It's never about, if you talk about Alabama when you're having the conversation. I mean, people talk about Florida State struggling to beat a Louisville team. That Louisville team's really good. That Louisville team scores a lot of points. Florida State shut them down. If you're going to talk about the struggles of Florida State recently, you have to talk about the struggles of Alabama. But you don't want to do it. No one wants to do it. I do it. Alabama took a 4th and 31 against Auburn. And Auburn lost to New Mexico State, who just got pile-drived through the concrete floor by the Liberty Flames. Thank you for letting me rant. That's the first rant I've had today. I got it out of my system. JD, Mr. Seminole himself, the floor is yours.
Hey, sir. I don't take issue with your caller earlier in the show talking about the difference between Bama and Florida State. Would it have been a little bit of a difference? Yes. There's a lot of nostalgia that's been going on with FSU this year, and the viewership numbers. We're not that far off from Bama. Now, you also get just a lot of SEC viewers, okay? The SEC conference, they always have the chant. After their games, both fan bases, as they're leaving, they're chanting SEC, SEC. Yeah. It's like you have 70%, well, probably half the conference never will really have a chance at really winning a national championship.
Yeah.
So they piggyback on the other team's championships. It's almost like, well, you know, we only lost by Georgia by 7 points. So it's a validation.
Yeah.
You know, and they get validated by the conference, and that's happened for decades. So now there's just this us against college football type of mentality. So you do get a lot of people that'll view the national championship game that are SEC fans that won't watch if an SEC team's not in there. That's true. It's not necessarily the brand, it's the conference. Stick FSU in the conference. Would we get slightly less viewership than Bama? Probably slightly, but not that much less. Some guy had posted on social media that there would have been $150 million difference if FSU would have been in there versus Bama. And then they found out he just made up the number.
Yeah.
He completely made up the number.
Yeah.
It was just a number he threw out there because that's ridiculous. You know, if you had a million different viewers, it's not worth $150 million. You know, if that's the case, I think FSU will have gotten over 50 million viewers on all their games this year. I guess we're worth $1 billion now, right? So, I mean, you could just make up whatever. But going back to the Clemson and FSU thing, I think the Big Ten's making a mistake if Clemson is available and you don't take it. I just think you're making a mistake. And because you have to think, FSU and Clemson, you look at success in the last 25, 30 years of all the brand programs that are available, and I'm talking about national championship competing brands, those are the last two. Is there anybody else? I can't think of anybody.
Yeah.
And I understand North Carolina may be more valuable academically to especially the Big Ten presidents and so on, but they're not going to be available for a while apparently, because from what you're talking about, and I appreciate all the information that you offered, because North Carolina kept getting circulated in all these rumors, and now we understand they don't even know what they're going to do.
They're not aligned. There's just too much infighting. You know, for example, if Florida State got an SEC offer, right, if somehow that came through and there was no talks between Big Ten and Florida State, which we don't agree with, we think there is, but we're just setting an example here, right? We're pretending. Sure. You know, Florida State would take the offer. If Clemson would take the offer, first come, first, you know, whoever gives them an offer, good offer, they're going to take it. North Carolina is not aligned. They would sit there with an offer and say, is this what we want to do? Half of them would say yes. Is more infighting going on at North Carolina than at Clemson and Florida. Those two schools are aligned. Whichever decision they're going to make, they're going to get consensus, build consensus. North Carolina is nowhere close to that, so that's why we have to look at who's going to be the replacement for Mike Gusowich, the chancellor of North Carolina. Who's going to be the new chancellor? That's going to give you a good indication on where North Carolina, who has the power to take North Carolina wherever the next step is.
Sure. You know, I can't speak for Clemson people, but if they are going to start making announcements or at least public statements, as you suggested on the timeline before, you have to assume they've had communications that they would have a home elsewhere. And, you know, I don't know if you remember a story I told you months ago that after the Clemson game, the Clemson FSU game, one of our insiders in particular was talking about Clemson Board of Trustee members were mentioning that either they were a take for the Big Ten or they were very possibly a take for the Big Ten. I have to go back.
They're one of the targets of the Big Ten. I know that for a fact.
Yes. And we know conversations back in August before 8/15 was that Fox and some of like Gene at War Chant and a few others and some of his Big Ten contacts did say that both FSU and Clemson were desired by Fox. So I don't know, you know, what's truth, what's not, what's going to happen. Everybody is unanimous, or at least from what I have heard, is that yes, FSU is a take for the Big Ten. So I kind of hope Clemson is. I'd like to have a Southern football power go with us.
Yeah.
I would have been fine with North Carolina. But when Immaculate was calling earlier, and I understand what he was saying, and I will say this about Georgia Tech. I do know that Georgia Tech has been considered because of the Atlanta market from people that I've talked to. I don't know how far along it got. That might be in a further round down the road. I don't know. But location was a big factor. And after Clemson and FSU, most everybody left that the Big Ten would be interested in as an academic school anyway. North Carolina, Virginia, some of the other ones. So if they say, okay, we're going to snatch up these two football powers, and then FSU now is right there. They're an academic school. They're a good academic university, and they're only improving. They're really close to AAU status. It's coming. They expect it within 5 years. And so you commented on a lot of that when back in August and some of the board of trustee meetings and things that the university has been moving forward. It kind of, some of the smoke Clemson was throwing out there in the summertime that they've started an academic, I forget the phrasing and the verbiage and so on, but in other words, they're pushing forward to drastically include their academic standards, and they do want to be a research AAU university. They have a campaign going towards that. So, it makes me wonder if they were being considered, or maybe if they were given some, I don't necessarily demands, but if you really want to be considered, you need to get on this path so that we can sell it to the rest of the, Big Ten presidents and so on.
Yeah, Clemson is one of the schools that the Big Ten has interested in. And you don't, people don't have to believe me. Just forget about Greg Flugar for a moment. Go to Brett McMurphy's tweets. Nobody has their fingers on the pulse of what's going on here than Brett McMurphy. And he used to talk about the targets of the Big Ten. And he would always include Florida State and Miami. He would include North Carolina. He would include Virginia. He would include Oregon and Washington, which happened. He would include Stanford and California, and we at Peek Around the Corner believed that the California thing was never going to happen. But in his last couple of tweets, when he listed the targets of the Big Ten, he included Clemson at the bottom of that list. And I'm not saying that at the bottom of the list. I'm saying that they're the last team that he would include. He started including Clemson. Then Brett McMurphy, one of those, I don't know if it was the last time he was on 365 Sports or the time before, but he flat out said, and I'm paraphrasing, but I'm not taking it out of context. He flat out said, North Carolina, Clemson, Florida State, going to be out of the ACC within the next 3 years. Now that mimics everything we're hearing, except for right now, it sounds like a first wave of Clemson and Florida State, but whatever. So Clemson, there is enough interest there where Clemson can use that as leverage and whatever with the SEC, and I think Clemson's in good shape when it comes to the next realignment. I think there's enough. I think they've been shown enough interest, and that is why Clemson hired that firm, right?
Yes, sir.
They hired that guy to see what the valuation is, what kind of deal. They did that for a reason. They've been working on this for months because they were shown enough interest from Fox and their proxy Big Ten, SEC, ESPN and their proxy SEC. So I think Clemson's in the game. That's why they're on the stage with Florida State at the Holy Smokes Theater.
Your prediction, my prediction is FSU to the Big Ten. That's my prediction. And do you agree with that?
3 weeks ago, Florida State Money Perch said 80% chance Florida State to the SEC. He has flipped that. So it's now advantage Big Ten. Because, relationships matter. And what's going on at Florida State. Have you noticed the Florida State's Board of Trustees, Mr. Collins? You notice he hasn't said a word?
Everybody is furious.
Yeah,
it's not getting better.
Yeah, he hasn't said a word in public though. He's keeping his powder dry. That's not good. That's actually not good news for the potential relationship of ESPN/SEC with Florida State. They're keeping their powder dry.
Joe Tessitore was in Tallahassee Tuesday night. And he's the one who called the ACC championship game, and he was in Tallahassee Tuesday night speaking at the Tallahassee Touchdown Club. And he did not have a good night.
Yeah, I saw a little bit of it, yeah.
And it's not getting any better. I think the relationship just with the fans and ESPN is no, you don't have to worry about the physical safety, okay, of an ESPN personalities. There's not going to be a hit called.
I hope not.
But this is going to be a grudge that lasts for decades. And I explained this. I was talking to somebody here in the last day or so, and I said, the relationship FSU has with this team is different than most people have with their teams. I don't know how it is for every other team, but we have full access. They record everything. You get to watch most of the practices. You get to watch all their social interactions. The football team and all the other sports teams are really tight. I don't know if people know, FSU has some of the best women's athletics. We just won the soccer national championship the other night again. Our softball team is usually in the top. They're competing for the national championship. The women's basketball team is getting better. The volleyball team beats. I can go down the list, and most of them are very, very successful. And all the different sports programs are really tight with each other, but they're also really tight with the community, the fans, near and far. And what it is, it's not just, this is the team I watch on Saturday. We've gotten to know these kids. We know what they like. They know what they like to do. It's like it's your kids or the kids from your town that you watch every Friday night or Saturday, or every weekend at ball games. And you went and stole it from our kids. That's where it burns. It's like it was your own kid. That's the bond that everybody had with this team. It was tighter than the bond with the 2013 team, the 1999 team, and the 1993 national championship teams. It's a tighter bond, and you basically stole it from them. That's why this burns. Are we going to get a lawsuit that works? That puts us in the playoffs? No, that's done. But people do need to answer. They need to answer, and there needs to be full transparency on what happened. And I'm sorry, I'm not. Let me say this: I am a forgiving person. I am, and I don't typically hold grudges. But I hope this hangs around the powers that be. I hope this hangs around their neck as a badge of dishonor for decades. If we didn't deserve to be there, that's one thing. but we deserve to be there, and they took it for money. And I'm a capitalist, and even I'm offended by this. There is no socialist bone in my body, and this is the biggest gut punch. So when people say, "Oh, FSU needs to get over it," it's like, you don't seem to understand the relationship we have with these kids. We know these kids. We know them. And you stole it from them. It's not just we as fans, we didn't get to go. You took it from them. And we owed so much to them for bringing our program back. And that's why this burns. It's just, it is a gut punch that doesn't get better.
Yeah.
And anyway, all right, sir. Well, I appreciate it. There's other topics I can talk about, but I just wanted to kind of hit those high points.
You got it. Thank you, sir. Great call,
Thanks.
JD. Appreciate it.
Night.
Mr. Seminole. Mr. Hoosier Daniel Montcastle, thank you. New member, early peak member. Sir, you are Cloak and Dagger United. Thank you, my friend of many, many, many years, Daniel Montcastle. Mr. Hoosier. Mr. Hoosier, they got themselves a new coach. They're going to get themselves a new quarterback. I don't know who the quarterback's going to be. But they got Coach Sig. They got the guy they wanted. He's got the fan base all fired up. Thank you, Daniel, for your generosity once again to Cloak and Dagger, to Early Peak. Thank you. Appreciate it very much. For those who don't know what Early Peak is, membership, you get the Cloak and Dagger Early Peak episodes. Again, early this morning was episode 8. We talked about Florida State's former president, Thrasher, who retired in 2021. He said, Florida State, this horrific act that was perpetrated on his university for Florida State not getting into the playoffs, he says this gives him hope that Florida State will leave the ACC here very soon. Cloak and Dagger, Early Peak. Hit the join button. So thank you, Mr. Daniel Montcastle. Mr. Hoosier. Okay, let's just get back to the comments. Hoosiers. That's right. That's right. I have to change my handle to Sir Daniel Montcastle. Ooh, maybe. Okay, I think we're going to close this live show up. We've been on over for 2 hours. I want to thank everybody for coming on this afternoon for college football's Peek Around the Corner. Major update in the Holy Smokes Theater. Virginia Tech tied at the hip. I know that's been speculated. It's been reported on how difficult it would be to split those two schools up. We've been told. Florida State money perch, Virginia money perch, these money perches, these big donors. A lot of money invested in their programs. A lot of money. A lot of people chewing on their fingernails because the future of some of these ACC schools are where they're going to be in the next 3, 4, 5 years. Man, it's going to be dramatic on how this all unfolds. But we were told very strongly, multiple times in the last 4 or 5 days, Virginia Tech, there's no way that you can separate them. So if the SEC is going to be taking one, they're going to be taking both. Big Ten is going to be taking one, they're going to be taking both. We talked about it early in the program. If you missed it, go to early in the monologue, the first 20 minutes of the first 40 minutes of this program, and we discussed the whys, the hows, Virginia Tech, and man, oh man, first quarter 2024, we keep getting told first quarter 2024. We talked about it in December 2022. January, February, March, April, May, June, July, first quarter 2024, first quarter 2024, first quarter 2024. How many days are we away from first quarter 2024? About 24 days away. So buckle up, brace for impact. The times still are changing in college football and across the college football athletic landscape. We're trying to follow every single story and report to you the portal, coaching changes, and all these lawsuits, and of course, the Holy Smokes Theater. So if you're new to the channel, and if you liked what you see today, please subscribe to our channel. Hit the notification bell. Make sure you know when we're coming on live next. Follow us at Flag Empire and on Twitter, X. And please, before you leave, smash that like button if you liked our content. If you did not like our content, hit the thumbs down button and let me know in the comment section or on Twitter at Flag Empire. Let me know how we can better serve you to give you the best college football's peek around the corner as we possibly can. Until next time, from all of us at PATC, to all of you, please you all take great care of each other. Thank you so very much.